everybody for joining us. We'll get started because I know we have a lot of ground to cover and a lot of people were super excited that we got a special guest today, Matt Neice, who's the Director of Counseling Services. For all of our new faces, welcome to the Boise State HR Fireside Chat. We do these weekly where we cover topics of interest and then also just try to keep you guys updated on anything that's going on in the employee side of Boise State. Luckily, I have I don't think I have any HR updates at this point in time, so just keep looking for the campus update. We have the HR section that shows up every once in a while if we have something to communicate with you. And we're gonna spend most of this session talking with Matt Neice and talking about how we're gonna survive 2020. If you came last week, we had a really great impromptu session where we had Holly Levin give us some great self-care tips. And we kind of just talked a little bit in the open about some of the challenges that we're facing and how some of us are coping. And I want to just personally thank everybody who was willing to share and participate in that. And please remember that these are fireside chats. So while Matt's here to give us some information, we also want to make this an open environment in which you can speak up. So feel free to throw comments or questions in the chat, on mic, if you are brave, and ask questions of us who are here from HR and of Matt. And without further ado, I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Matt Neice. Thank you again so much for being here.
Thanks, Casey. Welcome, everybody. I'm super excited to be here with you all. And I'm glad that you decided to show up. And as Casey said, I just want to reiterate that I very much welcome any kind of dialogue. I know that it takes a lot of vulnerability to share your personal stories, and this is an opportunity to lean into the discomfort of vulnerability and ask questions and potentially even just share out some stories in the name of sort of shared experience and normalization, and an opportunity to validate what we're all kind of going through right now. So my intention really is to go through some slides here, and all the while I want you to just stop me and ask questions or throw in some comments. I'll try to pay attention to the chat as much as possible, but yeah, let's jump in. And my hope is that you're seeing the PowerPoint. Can I get a head nod? All right, thanks, Casey. Okay, so I'm seeing some familiar faces, and I have done this mindfulness script twice now with two different groups, and I want to do it again. And so if this is a second time for you, the benefit is still the same. And so I want you to just sort of center yourself. Some people have found it more comforting to turn off their camera, close your eyes. But just for the next 3 or 4 minutes, I want you to be here now with intention. Okay, and so please just find a comfortable spot in your chair, put both feet on the ground, and really start to settle into your space. Okay. So, gradually notice the stillness of your body. Relax your stomach, chest, and shoulders, and begin to focus on your breath. Breathe in deeply through your nose, allowing the air to flow down your diaphragm, and then release. It may be helpful to count these 4 breaths to get the full benefit of stress relief. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 3 counts, and breathe out for 5 counts. Repeat the breath, allowing the air to gently flow through. Notice a sense of calm as you breathe out. Release tension and stress as you gradually find a comfortable rhythm for your breathing. Continue this gentle breath, noticing how your breath feels as it exits your mouth. Notice how this air feels. What is the sensation like? As you breathe in and out, notice any thoughts or feelings that you have. You might start to worry about the future or think about the past. It's normal for your mind to wander. Some feelings and thoughts might be very distressing, but do your best to observe and not judge. Make a note of the thought or feeling and what it is. Maybe you worried about an upcoming due date or about a conversation that didn't go so well. If a negative thought or feeling grabs your attention, make a note of it, and then return to focusing on your breath. It's natural for your mind to wander, but try not to be critical of yourself. Notice this thought or feeling, but don't follow it. Don't let your mind pursue it. Recognize that it's simply a thought. It's what your mind does. You can notice it and then let it go. Picture yourself in a peaceful place. Perhaps it's in a forest next to a gentle stream. Light is peeking through the tree canopy. Or perhaps you're at the beach, lying on the warm sand. A refreshing breeze blows and you feel relaxed. Imagine your thoughts and feelings are like the wind blowing or the waves rolling, and continue with your breathing, letting everything become the wind and the waves. Feel how the waves come and go. Remain calm and let your thoughts move and change. Continue to breathe. Intentionally bring your mind to a situation that you fear. Imagine yourself having a conversation you have been nervous about, or giving a speech. Sit with the uncomfortable thoughts and feelings that the situation brings and simply let them be without resisting. Relax and let the thoughts and feelings gradually dissolve. Down the river or away with the ocean waves, allow these feelings to dissipate. Remember that you will always experience some anxiety. It's impossible for it to completely disappear. Instead of resisting, learn to welcome your thoughts and feelings, accept them, and then feel how they float away. Our bodies are like a house, and these feelings are just visitors. Gradually, when you're ready, bring your attention slowly back to your breath, then move to your body and your surroundings. Move gently, open your eyes, and stretch. So thank you for participating in that. I want to come back to that experience and what that was like for you. But I want to move now sort of into some discussion pieces, right? I guess a norm I would like to set, and trust me, I know how difficult this is to avoid all temptation to look at your email and do other work for the next 49 minutes. I double dare you. Let's just try to be here now. I get caught up in disseminating knowledge, and I forget sometimes the whole topic of a conversation is, so I've just put the sort of piece of resistance here at the beginning, eat dessert first. And so here are some primary takeaways I just want to start with. some of the best self-care tips. I'm sure that Holly shared some amazing ones with you, but some that really work for me and the clients that I see are these that are on the screen right now. The first one is to record the best part of your day. If you can keep a journal and at the end of your day, just write very simply 1 or 2 sentences what the best part of your day was, it will do wonders for you. It primes you at the beginning of each day to be on the lookout for the best part of the day when so much of our society is focused on the worst part of our day. Okay. It also sends a sense of gratitude, right? It really prioritizes the positive. In a time where it's really difficult to stay positive with so much negative, this is a tangible way to do that. The second one is to always have something on your calendar that you're looking forward to. That could be a massage, a vacation, a cup of coffee with a friend, a phone call. As long as it is literally on your calendar and it's something that you enjoy and look forward to, make sure that's there. And then when you do said thing, put another thing on your calendar that you're looking forward to. The third one seems simplistic, just a little bit odd, but engage your 5 senses. It goes back to that idea of being here now, being in this moment, right? It's kind of the stop and smell the roses type of mentality. If you can figure out a way to engage all 5 senses to really bring you into the moment, it's one of the most healthy things you can do for self-care. And anywhere you go, there you are, and there your senses are. It's a very accessible intervention, so to speak. Obviously, prioritize the pillars of health. I know that, again, that is simple and not easy, but the pillars of health that we're referring to are diet, sleep, exercise, and socialization. Okay. Diet is making sure you get 3 square meals, making sure that it's not rushed, making sure you enjoy those things. Exercise, trying to break a sweat at least once a day. Sleep is probably the most important thing. It's probably the most important thing of any of this that I'll talk about today. If you can prioritize good quality sleep, you're doing the best thing you can do for yourself. Poor sleep is the equivalent to brain damage. And if that's not scary enough to try to have you prioritize sleep, I don't know what is. And then socialization, and we'll talk a lot more about that one. The last one is I empower you, I encourage you to set boundaries and say no. In helping professions that I exist in, and a lot of the folks that I talk to, saying no is something that's very difficult to do because we're helpers. We take a lot on. We say yes because we feel that's our duty. But saying no, as Brene Brown will say, setting boundaries is actually what the most loving people do. Saying no is actually a sign of love for yourself and prioritizing the things that you love and people that you love. And so I encourage you, empower you to do that. Okay. The next is, what is going on in our world right now? Why are we talking about surviving and even potentially thriving in 2020? The pandemic is one thing, and it's a massive, major thing, obviously. So is the racial inequities. So is the massive forest fires and hurricanes and the upcoming election. We have so many things happening in our life right now that are disrupting our typical way of being, that we've started to experience these very nuanced things. Okay. We're far enough along now in the COVID-19 pandemic where there's legitimate research coming out about it. And these are some of the psychological impacts of COVID-19. And I want to talk about those. While I talk about those, I want you to think about, how do I feel about these topics? Are these topics actually impacting me? How are they impacting me? Or do I totally disagree with it? And I want to hear any version of those things. And then the last thing and talk about some resilience in addition to how we might really lean in and prioritize some self-care. Okay, so we are experiencing all kinds of stress. Stress, very simply, for this presentation at least, is broken into three categories: acute, chronic, and external stressors. When you think of an acute stressor, think of something like a car wreck, right? Something very immediate, something very unforeseen, and very obviously acute, okay? Unpredictable. A chronic stressor, something that's been there for a very long time. Think about somebody who's been in a toxic relationship. Think about individuals who have a lifetime and maybe even generations of oppression. That is chronic stressors. And external stressors are something like the pandemic or the other things that I just mentioned. They're environmental. It's something that all of us in our society are facing. And the consequences of these stressors, regardless of if you're feeling one or a combination of all three, is reduced cognition, psychological issues, and physiological symptoms. And I know that by reading some of the chats and questions that you submitted, that some of you are actually very much experiencing the consequences of these stressors. Some other response to stressors seem very obvious. Some of these we know very well. Increased anxiety about deadlines, meetings, work performance, not to mention all other life duties that we have right now. I want to highlight this fourth bullet: feelings of anger, which I'll make the case is actually fear. Guilt and shame. Why would I feel guilt and shame for being so stressed out? Generally, it's because I'm being told by society that I'm supposed to be stronger. As an Idahoan, as an American, I'm supposed to pull myself up by the bootstraps, right? Rub some dirt on it. And when it's really gotten to me and impacted my daily functioning, I might feel guilt and shame, internalize that. I feel helplessness, difficulty regulating emotions. When I get really stressed out, and as you know, as a human being, I start to withdraw, right? I start to pull away from my people, from activities that have brought me meaning and purpose, enjoyment. This results in loneliness. And quickly, I want to just highlight that there's two forms of loneliness, simply speaking. The first is social, and the second is emotional. If I have social loneliness, I don't have very many friends. I don't have a high quantity of friends. If I'm emotionally lonely, I can have all the friends in the world and still not have anybody who really knows me, gets me, understands me. When I'm going through a tough time, I've got, hundreds of people in my contact list. I'm not sure which one to call because no one really knows me that well. And that's emotional loneliness. When I start to get really stressed out and isolate, it's important for me to have somebody that knows me, gets me, that will remind me of my strengths. Right? Emotional loneliness is really a primary threat to your well-being. I've been saying for months now that if you have a heartbeat, if you can fog up a mirror, then you are experiencing grief and loss. Now, we know what grief and loss is. Okay, all of us have experienced it in either very tangible ways with the death of a loved one, but a lot of us are experiencing ambiguous loss. In fact, I would argue that all of us are experiencing ambiguous loss. That means that my world has changed. Things have gone away or just drastically changed to the point where I no longer have the same connection with them. In a response to the ambiguous loss comes disenfranchised grief. Disenfranchised grief is a type of grief that a person wouldn't necessarily know to send you a Hallmark card for, right? Hey, Matt, sorry that you're struggling with the pandemic. Doesn't really exist, right? Anticipatory grief. We have all of these losses happening, and we have so many losses that are presumably on the horizon that we're sort of prepping ourselves right now for the grief that we will feel in the future or continue to feel. Avoidance is actually a tool that a counselor would tell somebody to lean into. We've heard that avoidance is generally a bad thing, but used in the right dosage and in moderation is actually very helpful. But because it's helpful in the short term, we tend to lean on it for a long-term solution, and that's not what we want to do. In fact, we want to adapt to the loss. We want to change with, and I know everybody hates this term, the new normal, right? We want to try to make meaning out of some of this, try to see the silver lining in this. Something that I think about quite often is the fact that you can't step in the same river twice. So much of us want to get back to the way things were. A, that's not possible. And B, maybe the old normal wasn't so great either. We're actually pretty bad historians, and some things could really come from this that are quite beneficial. All right. So one of the principal psychological impacts of COVID-19 has to do with the fear that exists. Am I going to get the pandemic? Are my family members going to be safe? I guess I really want you to know that your fear, it makes sense. Okay. The pandemic, it's scary. Massive forest fires are scary. Racial inequality is scary. The very emotionally charged political scene right now, very scary. Your fear makes sense. Know that. But also know that people and systems are instigating and capitalizing on your fear. They want you to be afraid. Systems, people, portions of society are banking on your fear, because when we are afraid, we make irrational decisions. I put flipping your lid here just to simply highlight a phenomenon that happens. So our lizard brain, right? The most primary parts of our brain that have the amygdala, the fight, fight, or flees, is in the middle of our brain. When we are afraid, our frontal lobe right here flips. It goes offline. Our ability to, for long-term thinking, for planning, for problem solving, for rational thinking goes away. And so we are left with the fight, flight, or freeze response. Our adrenaline is pumping. And so, yes, it makes sense that fear is one of the greatest motivators. Okay. We really almost can't do anything about it because it's such an inherent reaction, right? To act, to freeze, to do something to stay safe. And so a lot of people use fear as a motivator. What I'm trying to promote is that instead of instilling fear, instead of trying to deny your fear, instead recognize it and then work to eliminate the doubt that you have in yourself, the doubt that you have in systems, which will only increase more fear. Okay, I said before that I'm going to try to make the case that anger is actually fear. Anger, as we know it from research, is what they call a secondary emotion. Fear, sadness is at the core of anger, but being afraid and being sad is not something that our society really condones. It's not really something that's, I guess what I'm saying is that when you express fear, it's seen as a sign of weakness, right? But when we are afraid and we express our fear through anger, people generally respond to us with anger. Okay, we get nowhere when we fight fire with fire. And so what I am trying to promote is that when someone in your life is angry, that you stop yourself and say, wait a minute, what is this person afraid of? If you can try to speak to their fear instead of their anger, you're going to have a way more productive interaction. When you yourself are angry, try to call a timeout and say, wait a minute, Matt, what are you afraid of? What are you sad about? If I can identify those things, I can mitigate my fear and operate so much more effectively and healthy. Furthermore, anger is the only emotion that needs a direction. When I get angry, I have to get angry at someone or something, right? And if I can't find a legitimate source of my anger, that anger actually boomerangs and it comes back at me, and I start to internalize my own anger. And anger, it festers. It's toxic. Okay, it will chew me up, quickly lead to burnout. Right now, in our society, fear is pervasive. In fact, half the time, I don't really even know what I'm afraid of. I'm just told from every direction that I'm supposed to be afraid. And when I'm primed with that narrative, I will look for the threat. Okay. And when I'm looking for a threat, I will find one 100% of the time, real or imagined. I will make up a threat. And that is what's happening right now in our society. We are being handed an illegitimate threat, right? It's the Democrats, it's the Republicans, it's the non-mask wearers, it's whatever excuse that exists to try to legitimize your fear, your anger. It's all around, right? What that has created is a divisive society. If you're experiencing this, it's okay. I'm just trying to normalize and validate this for you so that you might know that this is going on, so that you can choose to respond in a different way. The last point I want to make here is that uncertainty of the future, which all of us are experiencing, leads to feelings of lack of control. We get mad at people for not providing us the answers. We just assume that answers exist and they're being withheld from us. We get angry that people aren't working hard enough to come up with the answers that are going to check the box. We are really bad decision makers. We just inherently, as humans, do not like to make decisions. The root word of the word decide is side, CIDE, like suicide, homicide, genocide, pesticide. It means to kill. And so when we are faced with a decision, we are killing other options, and we do not like to do that. We like to put the onus on another person to make the decisions for us, and that's not happening right now because we do not have enough information to know what the right decisions are. So, one of the principal ways to manage anxiety, depression, fear, responses to what's going on in the world right now is to recognize what you have control over, what you don't, and the wisdom to tell the difference between the two things, right? For those of you who don't know, this is sort of the linchpin that the 12-step program hinges on, this idea of control, not getting swept away in situations where you just honestly do not have control over. Okay, so with that in mind, there is a theorist, Viktor Frankl. He was in the Jewish internment camps, and he is one of the founding fathers of the counseling profession, I would argue. His quote is that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. His book was Man's Search for Meaning, and what he discovered when in an internment camp was that his prisoners, or his imprisoners, the Nazis, could beat him, kill his friends, but they could never take away his freedom to choose how he was going to feel and respond to the stimulus. If you'll remember back to the beginning of this conversation, one-sided conversation so far, sorry, with the mindfulness activity, where I asked you to let those fears go. Imagine them floating down the stream or rolling away with the waves. That's you making a choice to let go. It's you identifying, A, this is how I feel. B, it makes sense that I feel this way. And C, I'm going to choose to think, feel, and respond differently. Before I jump into the resilience part, I do kind of want to open it up to the group. I know that there were some questions that came in before the start of the conversation today, but we're about at the halfway point, and I want to make sure that there's enough time and space for us to kind of process through what drew you to this conversation today. Does anybody want to be courageous and step into that space?
And feel free to add that in chat and I'll read it for you.
Thanks, Casey. It's another fun thing about Zoom is you can't really tell anybody's nonverbals. I'm usually really good at calling people out.
Lori's got a question about tools that are available. Know if other people feel the same. Actually, there was a comment that was made in the intake that was like, I can't focus. I feel like everything is too much. How do I refocus? And I was like, yes, Matt, let's talk about that. I can't wait to hear that one. So just so you guys know, you're not alone. We're all feeling this. How to survive every day, a desire to know if other people feel the same. Yeah. So Matt, if you have some tools, I think maybe if it's going to be later in your presentation, or if you can share some of them with us now, that seems to be the big thing.
Yeah, I was reluctant to kind of put it all down in the PowerPoint thing. I'm not a huge fan of PowerPoint. I'm way more of a conversationalist. And so to the question of what do I do? I'm struggling. I've had very real loss, death of loved ones, and everyday loss. I'm struggling to show up to work and do my job. I'm struggling to be a mom and balance the expectations and just necessary things as a parent and human. I want to say first and foremost that you have to know that all of that makes sense. You have to give yourself a pass. Okay. When you start to internalize and say, I'm weak, or I should be performing better, I should be doing better, what I would say is don't should on yourself. We just set ourselves up with unrealistic expectations that we will fail to meet almost every single time. Okay. That there are a lot of opportunities for us to reframe the things that are happening, both directly to us, but in our society as well. And something that is in the presentation I'll get to later, but I'll say right now, is that there is so much beauty in the world, so much more beauty than anything else still in the world. To choose to pay attention to those things is of utmost importance. We're at a real threat right now to succumbing to what's called the mean world syndrome, right? With all of the news and all of the dialogue and all of people's just interpersonal narratives becoming quite negative and not having much optimism, we start to think, oh my gosh, the world is just bad. And when that really works its way into us and becomes part of our narrative, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We start to only pay attention to the bad as part of that confirmation bias that starts to unfold. Okay. So I guess what I'm asking you is recognize that you are not alone. All of your reactions, responses, and experiences make sense. And try to not give in to all of that. Okay. How do I do that, Matt? Sounds so simple when you say it. Are there thoughts or questions about that? I'm really struggling, to be honest with y'all. I can't see any of your faces, and I don't know.
If you want to jump out of share mode, you can see more faces, or jump out of, the share mode. You can see a few more faces. And if anybody is going to be brave and turn off your, or turn on your camera so Matt can see some faces. Matt, do you want to stop sharing for just a second? We have quite a few comments in the comment box that we can work through.
Yes.
So we had one from Deanne. How do I know when you should seek outside help, counseling to help cope with responsibilities? I threw the EAP in there, and this is my shameless plug. I think I told you guys last time that only 6% of employees that have an EAP program are actually using it. So please use it. I would encourage anyone, even if you are feeling good, to just give it a try. You don't know how helpful just a weekly, every other week, a monthly debrief with an outside person who has literally no stake in the game to help you process what you're going through, what you're thinking, what you're feeling can do for you. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. 5 free sessions. What do you have to lose? Use the EAP.
That was a great plug.
I think so. Do you have anything to add on that comment in general, Matt, as far as when to know you should probably start seeing a provider? On a more serious note, that's my uneducated answer, just as a colleague who cares about you. Now the expert will speak.
I would just say that almost all of us wait until things have become a crisis or unmanageable before we ask for help. And I am really trying to flip the script on that. You don't wait until your teeth are rotting to go to the dentist, right? So schedule those appointments. Even if you think you don't have something to talk about, I promise you that a counselor will help uncover something for you to talk about. But when you have gone it alone and really try to navigate your stressors on your own, and you're falling short and it's impacting your daily functioning, that is absolutely when it is time to call in for some help. That's kind of the staple phrase. When it starts to impact your daily functioning, negatively impact your daily functioning.
Hi, this is Lee.
Hi, Lee.
And I've used EAP and it was great. There wasn't pressure. Nobody else knew about it. The first person that I went to, I didn't feel comfortable with them. I let EAP know. They sent me a couple of other names. So I found somebody that I could comfortably talk with. So it was great, really was.
Thank you, Lee. And that highlights such an important thing too. And that we have that narrative worked into every one of our first sessions, is that the efficacy of counseling has almost 70% to do with the rapport and relationship that you feel with your counselor. And so if you're not feeling it with me, let's get you with somebody that you are feeling it with. And please feel empowered to ask for a different counselor, regardless of where you go.
You guys are wonderful. Thank you, Lee, for unmiking. That was great. Okay, so Maggie, don't wait for things to get so bad to have the conversation with somebody. Thank you for that. I'm gonna scroll back up. We had a question we had a comment from Rita, and it was super valid. There's this fear of how all this stress will change me and my relationships. I think that's a really valid fear, because it's not just like how the world is gonna change, but like then there's this intangible fear of like, if I don't see my work colleagues, how does this impact those interpersonal relationships? I don't see my family. How does that impact things? My kids don't see their grandparents as much. What is that gonna do? Yikes. I'm just validating. I don't have any help or suggestions.
But that is helpful. I mean, you're validating, Casey, and to know that you're not alone is important to always remember. And what we're talking about, at least in that regard, is ambiguous loss again, right? I wouldn't necessarily know to send you a get well card because your relationships are changing, right? I'm sort of programmed to only reach out to people when they've had a death in the family, or have, gotten cancer or something like that. Um, I guess I'll make a plug here that it doesn't take that much effort to be a positive influence in somebody else's life. By telling someone that you appreciate them, something very small. I just read a comment and it deeply touched me. Sean just said, Matt, you're a gift to Boise State. That's going to fill my cup for the rest of the day. That's probably what I'm going to write in my journal tonight. And it took seconds. The problem with the way things have shifted right now, due to the pandemic, due to the racial inequities, due to all of the news that is just unfolding, the clickbait that's out there, right? Bad news is what's most watched, is that we start to lean into this pessimism. We start to pull away from one another. We are inherently pack people. We need our pack, right? If I get pulled away from my pack, I start to really flounder. And so through positivity, we need to continue to connect with one another. And that doesn't mean that you need to go over to your neighbor's house and rake their leaves, but simply waving to a stranger as they're going on their walk. I guess I'm just saying, try to continue to maintain the positivity that is so simply expressed, because that is what will stick with people. You never know when you'll be the best part of somebody's day. On a university level, I know that some of you have probably heard me talk about this, but the president has really championed this idea of an empathy campaign. And so we're working to embed this in everything that we do, that we start to treat one another as they want to be treated, right? That we start to try to understand what a person is going through. We start to validate their lived experience, especially in a time where so much of our society is invalidating what a person's reality really is. It doesn't take that much effort to try to meet a person where they're at and say, yeah, Michelle, yeah, Stephanie, yeah, Trader. That's her new nickname. I get it. And even if I don't get it, I'm here for you. Like, I might not have the answers, but I'm here to support you. Nothing feels better than to have somebody in the trenches with you. They don't need to have the answers. Okay, have I gotten a little too soapboxy?
No, I thought that was perfect. And I'm seeing a lot of like validation in the videos. Thanks y'all for turning on your videos. I love it.
Yeah,
We should try to make this a norm. If you come to the HR chat, you don't have to wear makeup. You don't have to like any of it. Just turn on your video. We want to see your faces.
So can I make a comment along
course.
the lines of changing relationships? So I have a lot of very, very close friends who, differ from me politically and have different mask beliefs than I do. And I'm usually very, very good about, I love you the way you are, whatever. But how do you not change your opinion of somebody who's very important to you when their beliefs are so different than yours?
I thought you were going to say not want to shake them.
Sometimes.
That's how I do it. I lean into the goofiness. I'm like, I want to shake you with love until you understand how ridiculous you are.
Right, but I am zero confrontational. So
yes,
that would totally be out of my wheelhouse.
Well, Sue, that's an important piece of your narrative, though. And thank you so much for sharing that. The fact that you're not a confrontational person probably means that you internalize a lot of that, and it starts to just build, and that resentment starts to build too, which only widens the gap. It keeps you from expressing your truth. And this idea of shaking people is that anger, right? What you're really expressing, Sue, is that you're afraid that you're losing this friendship, that this thing that has meant something to you is slipping. And the anger has only been exacerbated by what's happening in our society right now that say, you, or, you should, or them. And it's so hard for us to not just succumb to that type of mentality. And so, my best friend, I love him to death and always will, best man at my wedding, just disclosed to me that he has completely different views from me. It shocked me to my core. It was a left field thing. I could not believe what I was hearing. And my first reaction, I started to tear up because I was so taken back. But I need to work from a place of understanding. There's an acronym, it's called REAL. I love acronyms. REAL is respect, empathy, active collaboration, and listening to understand and not respond. That last one is super important. Now, let me understand what you're saying, and I keep an open mind. I don't need to agree with him, but I keep an open mind to make sure that pillar of trust is still intact, right? We can have differing views, and I can still connect to the human that is there if I'm allowing myself to respect, have empathy, try to understand him, and really listen to understand versus just wait for my turn to respond, which is what so much of us are doing right now. Thank you for sharing that, Sue.
That was brilliant.
Thank you very much.
What more do we have here? I'm just looking at the time. And
No, yeah. We're gonna have to have you as a repeat offender, Matt, because this was beautiful. I just want to say on a personal note that this was super helpful to me as a human. So I'm volunteering you that you're gonna be joining
I'll
us.
be back. These meetings they're brilliant. I'm so happy they exist.
And just by like a show of either actual hands or the cute little chat hands, who's down for Matt coming back, just so I'm not making this as a unilateral decision. Oh my gosh, I have never seen so much movement in these cameras. That just made my day. Okay, so
I think
Matt,
I just saw a thumbs down though, so that
I'm
didn't
really
have to be
hoping
unanimous.
that was an accident.
Just joking.
Okay, so we have, the time has flown. We do have 10 minutes left. So what I would like to do is, Matt, the rest of your presentation, I'd really like to have it as a part 2, Surviving 2020. And I want to just like fill the rest of this 10 minutes with any other comments that are going to be coming in, because I felt like that had a really nice flow. And we do have a couple more things in there. I just want to say that a couple people, I'm going to let you guys go read them, but they threw in what they thought as far as like positives that came out of this. If we're focusing on the positive, I'm just going to spoil it. Lori said that like the environment has been cleaned up. Like I think Jerry Mizrahi said that it was like the first 4 weeks of quarantine, and she was like, the dolphins are swimming through Italy, like in the waters were clearing. She's like, so nature is kind of like retaking some things. And so every once in a while when I have a really bad day, I'm like, there are dolphins swimming through the canals in Italy. So I'm stuck in my house and this sucks, but the dolphins are having a great time. So I mean, that's a beautiful thing that you can look onto. Okay, so Lil, you had thrown in there to keep in touch with friends. We have Zoom lunches, and with my grandkids, I drop off a monthly goodie box, and we have weekly Zoom video conference, and that has helped a lot. Ooh, this is just giving me an idea. Can we talk about community building for just a second? What else are we doing for community building? Because I think from what I'm hearing, that seems to be something that we're missing. Any other suggestions in there? And don't everybody feel like you have to throw it in chat. We've had a couple brave people talk.
our office has been having lunches every once in a while. Most of us are on Zoom and some of them are in their offices, but it's been nice to be able to connect, to laugh, to just, not talk business. It's been good.
Casey, can I answer this question from Sarah?
Yes, I'm just getting down to that one because I actually have that same question after homeschooling my kids. I have zero energy. Like yesterday, we did an assessment that was supposed to take 45 minutes. It took 3 hours, y'all. And she was not the only one crying. So I would love to know how I tap back in after that.
Yeah, so these really pointed questions, I struggle to always provide a very tangible answer. But something I do want to highlight is that this idea of if you don't have motivation, then you must rely on your discipline is a kind of like the American way, right? Like the Idaho way, the just tough it out type of mentality that I was talking about in the beginning, that really is a broken type of mentality that threatens our mental health all of the time. So if you'll entertain this thought, our emotions exist on these frequencies, right? We are set up with the expectation that we should be happy, okay? And so when I'm anything but happy, I start to either deny my experience, shame myself for not being happy, or blame somebody else for my unhappiness. What I'm saying is that no, we need to be just as sad as we are happy. We don't want to exist up here at the peak of the frequency, because when you are perpetually happy and something awesome happens, you don't have anywhere to go but up, but down, right? You can't go any higher. We want to experience the full range of emotions, because without the bitter, the sweet isn't as sweet. And so I guess what I'm saying is that it's okay to not have motivation and to not get anything done. Your motivation will come back. It's okay to be depressed. It's okay to be sad. And I know that there are times where I don't have any motivation, but having no motivation is different than having no energy. Okay, and that's an important distinction to make. When you feel like I have no motivation, ask yourself, where is this coming from? Did I not get any sleep last night? Do I have nothing left in the tank? Am I actually just resentful to this thing that I don't have motivation to do? Or have I just worn myself thin because I haven't said no? I haven't set any boundaries in my life, and therefore don't have any energy left in the tank. So there's a lot that you can kind of uncover to provide you your own answer in that scenario. And I would guess, at least educational guess, that it probably has something to do with setting boundaries.
So
we only have a finite amount of energy, right?
Yeah. So for those of us listening, and I'm gonna just, because you're here and we have 5 minutes, how do you set boundaries when you are expected to homeschool, work full time, and parent?
Yeah, I feel you.
So maybe we need to brainstorm that as a group. How can we set some boundaries? I like the putting something positive on my calendar too. That's how we get through the week.
Yes. Yeah. So scheduling your time is very important, especially right now where our routines are just drastically thrown off. We have kind of just gotten swept away with that, but routines are very, very, very important. And if you can schedule in self-care and protect that sucker, nothing's going to get to it, regardless of your duties or responsibilities. You're going to show up better and more efficient when you have to. Right? We could talk all day about that. Brene Brown has a great 5.5 minute clip on setting boundaries. I would strongly encourage you to check that out.
I'll make sure to find that and put it in the follow-up email for everybody, just as like a little treat. I hate to do this. We are so close on time, guys. We've got 4 minutes. Sarah, do you feel like we've at least tapped into your question? you can give me a thumbs up. Oh,
I'm gonna actually unmute myself so you can actually hear me. Whoa. Yes, I just want to say I really appreciate everything that you said today, Matt. And I think that there's that caveat, at least for me, and I'm sure other people have felt like you just expect, okay, it's okay not to feel motivated, but it's going to come back in this X amount of time. And for a lot of us, that I think sometimes it gets worse. And so just to know that that's validated and that we're all going to get through this together is just, it's very healing. So thank you.
Ask for help too. I mean, here we are, the ones that are the helpers. I mean, so many of us are the helpers, and we're like prone to ask for our own help. So yes, we're all in it together, but you don't really reap the benefit of that until you actually ask for help from the rest of us. So please just challenge yourself to ask for help.
One of the things that I have found on the not zero motivation is the lack of control of my circumstances. I lost the most important thing of my job, which is interaction with the people. And, you know, so you feel totally out of control. So where do you how do you get back that?
Yeah, I agree. I've quickly realized that the thing I enjoy most about my job at Boise State is the ability to interact with everybody from across campus and all the clients that come in, and that's not happening anymore. And so I hear you, Lori. Something that's really keeping my boat afloat is recognizing that this situation is not permanent. If I can push back on that there are better days on the horizon, which there has been every single time I've faced something really terrible in my life, things have always gotten better. This will too.
I think that's the best thing to end on right now, is that there are going to be better days. Like we've got to find the hope in this. We are like right on time. Thank you everybody for joining us. I will send a recap email with the video. Please feel free to watch it again to feed your souls, it takes like hearing something 3 or 4 times before your brain finally starts to say, oh yeah, that. So feel free to listen to this again until you start to feel it working for you. I'll put out next week's topic in that email. And Matt, I'm going to put something on your calendar. We're going to bring you back. We're going to finish the part 2 of many, surviving 2020. You guys are all amazing. Have a great week. And if you need anything, your HR is here for you. Have a great week, guys.
That was great. Thank you.